morning, everyone. I'm derrickeday, and it's time for Forward Live. And this is the podcast or the stream where we talk about real solutions to real problems, real shit that helps you get through real life, right? So, what I want to talk about today, and I'm actually going to kick off a series on self, because I think that the most important thing that any of us can possibly know is ourselves. And the reality is, sad but true, is that the majority of us have no idea who we really are. And so we want to start with some self awareness. Now, the first question I want to ask you is, are you alive? Are you alive? How can you prove that? Well, I always start by taking a deep breath. That tells me that I'm breathing. Then I do something like maybe check my pulse. If I can feel my pulse, then I say my heart is beating. Then I look around. I observe my environment. So I know my visual faculty is working. And then I do things like wiggle my hands, wiggle my toes. You can't see me wiggling my toes, but to make sure that my limbs are working, right? So these are some of the things that we do to determine our physical self-awareness. But then we need to get into our mental self-awareness. What is the old Latin term? Cogito ergo sum, which means I think, therefore I am. So the question is, are you thinking? And one of the things that people often mistake is consciousness and thought. Consciousness is simply being awake, that your sensory functions are enabled, that the car is running. But thinking actually puts the car in gear, right? Thinking actually releases the clutch if you're doing a manual, or puts it in drive if you're driving an automatic. But the thing is that thinking is where your brain is actually engaged. So what are you thinking about? What are your thoughts? Are your thoughts of peace, of happiness, of joy, of love, of camaraderie, of success? Or are your thoughts more about hatred, disinformation, confusion, chaos? All of these things are important to understand, because if you don't really have command of your thoughts, you really don't have command over you. It used to be said that the soul consists of the mind, the will, the intellect, and the emotions. And so I always say that if you think about the soul as a nation, and you think about this militarily, that you want to take down the capital city, because that's the center, the nerve hub of all communications and logistics. So if you take down the capital city, you take down the entire nation. Therefore, if you subdue the mind, the will, the intellect, and the emotions will follow. So again, what are you thinking? What are you thinking about? Are you thinking how you can improve yourself? Are you thinking of how you can help others? Are you thinking of what your place in the world, in the universe is? Because I want you to really give that some thought. Because if you can understand your place in things, in other words, what is my contribution? At the end of the day, what is it that I'm contributing to society to make it better? What am I contributing to others to make them better? And what am I giving to myself to make me better? So you have to be really aware of your thoughts. You have to be aware of your mental aspects. Now, emotions are different, because there are some people that really talk down to emotions, and they'll say, well, we need to be more logical and reasonable. And I have to admit that occasionally I get down that rabbit hole. But emotions are important, and you need to understand your emotions and you need to listen to your emotions. Because again, what is your emotional content? What, first of all, what is your emotional quotient, your EQ, like IQ? And it's actually measurable. How do you love? How do you extend empathy and compassion to others? How do you extend empathy and compassion to yourself? How do you feel about people around you? How do you feel about your circumstances? And all of these things, basically, you have love, hate, happiness, sadness, anger, all of these different emotions. And you really need to be in touch with all of these emotions, because here's the thing: there is nothing wrong with being angry, and there's nothing wrong with being sad. These things are part of humanity, and if you are experiencing them, that means that you're human, right? So that goes back to step one: self-awareness, or how do I feel, or what is my physical understanding. But anyway, be angry, but don't let your anger get the best of you. Don't let your anger go out and slap somebody in the mouth. Don't let your anger cuss someone out. Don't let your anger get you in trouble at work or at school. Don't let those things interfere with your life, right? The other thing too is that happiness, we always think about, well, we want to be happy, right? But you can be happy to the degree that, well, let's just say that if your happiness, if you have happiness in the midst of someone else's grief, expressing your happiness when someone else is mourning, it could be a bad thing. Basically, when people are grieving, grieve with them, sit with them, but don't over don't overemphasize your happiness in the midst of someone else's sorrow. That's really called being a dick, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so we need to take inventory of our mental, our physical, our emotional, but then let's talk about spiritual. And this is one that I personally struggle with, because I don't consider myself to be spiritual, but I understand that I'm a spirit being. And part of this thing, let me just say this: for me, it's understanding a global consciousness, that there is something powerful that connects all of humanity, that ties us all together. There's a universal message, a universal theme, a universal thought, if you will, that connects everyone. And I know that some of my atheist friends are going to scoff at this, but the reality is that there is something that connects all of us. There's it's been said that there's a fungal growth that covers most of the world, most of the landmass of the world, and it's sort of the internet of plants. That through this fungus, through this ubiquitous fungus, plants are able to communicate with one another. That's really powerful. That means that there's a sort of a universal consciousness of plants. Well, if plants are a lower order of life than humans, as we understand life, why wouldn't there be a universal consciousness among humans? And this is where, we get things like deja vu, we get things like premonitions, we get things like, where prophetic, psychic, things like that. These things are all part of the universal consciousness. It's all how we're connected. And so we can get an insight or a vision about how something that someone else is going through, right? And I don't want to get too far into the weeds in this, but what I want to say is that however you choose to express your spirituality, you need to do that. But always remember that everything that you do, everything, not just spiritual, but mental, physical, and emotional as well, you need to make sure that what you're doing isn't done at the expense of others. In other words, You need to make sure that, hey, I have this thing that I want to do. I have this thing in my heart. I have this thing in my mind, and I want to express it. But if that expression comes that causes harm to someone else, and again, you have to go back and look at some of the discussions that Aaron Tomlinson and I had about hurt versus harm, because it's really important that you understand that, and that's another topic for another time. But what we want to do is make sure that what we're saying, what we're doing, what we're acting upon, that it doesn't cause harm to others. That means that it doesn't cause any lasting damage, that it doesn't cause any permanent effect on someone that's a negative way, right? So again, you have to think about your total being. This is your self-awareness. Now, let me ask you this. How many of you can give an account, like say a 30-second account of who you are, like an elevator pitch of who you are? Let's say if you were introducing you to yourself for the first time, what would you say about you to get you to understand you, yourself? And so there are certain things. Ask someone, what is their favorite color? What is their favorite song? What is their favorite sound? What is their favorite time of the day? What is their favorite season of the year? What is their favorite month? Who is their favorite actor? What is their favorite movie? What is their favorite book? These are all things that have to do with being aware of yourself. Like, for example, me personally, I could tell you my favorite movie is Fight Club. My favorite book is The Stand by Stephen King. Favorite fiction book. My favorite nonfiction book is The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. My favorite song, I would say that my favorite song in the whole wide world is probably Maybe Tomorrow by the Jackson 5. That's it. But again, and my favorite color is green. So you know a little bit more about me as a result. And and favorite car, Porsche. I love Porsches, right? I've had I don't know, it's about 4 or 5 of them, but I love those cars. So these are some things that I like, and so I can just kind of rattle that off really quickly and let somebody know what the thumbnail sketch of what my likes are or what my dislikes are. Or let's say dislikes. Favorite food, king crab legs. Got to throw that in there. It's followed closely by bacon. But things that I don't like, my least favorite food is coconut. I hate coconut. I hate coconut with a fervent passion. It is absolutely disgusting to me. My least favorite movie would probably be, I don't know, like Snow White. I don't know. I'm not really big into those old Disney cartoon movies. Least favorite TV show, Friends. I mean, here's the thing. I could talk about these things because I understand me. I understand my likes. I understand my dislikes. I understand what turns me on. I understand what turns me off. And you have to have this because when you're dealing with people, you have to be able to be aware of where you are in this relationship. And that means understanding your likes and dislikes, what you will tolerate and what you won't tolerate, what you'll celebrate and what you'll, rail against. All of these things are really important, and it's part of the inventory of yourself. You have to take inventory of you. Just like if you're in retail or if you're in wholesale, or other warehousing businesses, you have to take inventory of what you have in stock so that you know what you have to sell, what you have on hand to sell. Because if you are light some items, then you may have to order them or you may have to make them or whatever the case may be. But you have to deal with that shortage, right? So when you take inventory of yourself, you find out, okay, what do I have on hand? What is immediately available to me and what isn't? And those things that are not available to me right now, okay, how do I go about getting them? Because one of the things, my sister and I, Sandy and I, we had a conversation yesterday, and I told her that it has always been my desire to learn. I always wanted to understand things. So whenever I didn't understand something, I went on a mission to read about it, to study up on it, to learn it, and then to apply it in some practical sense so that I had a working knowledge of it. It wasn't enough to know it in an academic sense. I wanted a practical understanding of it. So these are things that I've done because when I find my inventory is short, I go to figure out how do I replenish that inventory or how do I actually add that inventory. Because see, sometimes you are replenishing supply that you had and that it's been depleted, and sometimes you're adding things to your personal inventory that you didn't have at the onset, right? So again, self-awareness is taking inventory of you. It's being able to give a ready report about what's inside you. And this is really important because as we go through this whole series on self, we're going to go from self-awareness to self-actualization, self-realization. And you can't actualize anything about yourself or realize anything about yourself without understanding, having an awareness of self. You have to get this all down pat. And there's a bigger reason for this because what you're going to do in working on your self-awareness, you're going to actually build out what your core values are. And when you build your core values, now you're able to articulate your why. And that's getting down the road in this teaching a bit, but that's the key to this. I want you to get to the point where you understand your why. And understanding your why begins with you. It begins with self-awareness, self-realization, self-actualization. You have to build on all of these things because eventually this is going to take you to where you're developing your core values. What means something to me? What is meaningful to me? And once you understand what is meaningful to you, now you're able to communicate some things to others externally. Why is this important? Because people don't buy your what, your who, your where, your how. People are not really concerned about that. If you are seeking to be an impactful person in the world, and I believe that each and every one of you is created to be impactful in some way. I believe that each and every one of you has something to contribute to me and to the rest of the world. But you can't do it if you don't understand your why. And getting in touch with you, getting in touch with yourself is absolutely essential to making that happen. Now, for those of you who are interested, I'm putting this out here and I'll put the link in the chat. This Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time, which that's 7 Eastern, 5 Mountain, and 4 Pacific, I'm going to conduct a live mastermind. And we're going to drill into this whole thing about self-awareness. Really, we're going to get really deep into this. And then I will have a question and answer session at the end of it where you will be able to ask questions and share your insights on self-awareness as well. So look for that link in the chat. And also, August is my birth month. I will be 61 years old on August the 16th. I know I don't look like it. But here's the thing. I'm going to also put my Cashapp in the link so that you can help me celebrate my birthday. Now, let me tell you this. Every dollar, every cent that you contribute to me for my birthday, I'm going to use this to buy airfare to fly to Colorado so that Aaron Tomlinson and I can do a Freeology Friday live together in the same room. And I think that the energy, I think that the wisdom, I think that just the mere fact that we're able to connect like this, that it's going to be something life-changing. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm just not blowing smoke. I think that this is something that will be incredibly awesome to both Aaron and myself, but it will also be really good for you, our viewers. So look for that in the chat. And if you have any questions about self-awareness between now and the mastermind on Wednesday, so I'll be putting the link out for the mastermind. I'll be putting the link out for the Cash App and other ways that you can connect with me online. But please tune in to the mastermind on Wednesday night. I think that this is going to be really, really fun. It's going to be exciting, and it's going to be a revelation to you about you. Because at the end of the day, really, life is all about you and how you share yourself with humanity. So until the next time, may you be happy, may you be well, may you be filled with peace. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.